Hi everyone, my name is Carla the Bubble Lush, and I just wanted to start a new series entitled What to Expect. So, the first video in this series is going to be talking about the HSG. HSG stands for Hysterosalpingogram. Hystero means uterus, salpingo means fallopian tubes, and gram means gram. The hysterosalpingogram is a X-ray look at your uterus and fallopian tubes. Most of the time, women that are starting their infertility treatments are asked to do this to make sure that their fallopian tubes are nice and clear and that the uterus is a normal shape. A lot of times if you do a Google search on, kind of like what to expect with an HSG, you'll hear that, take some painkillers an hour before and it's not that bad. So I just thought I would share a little bit more. So I made my appointment for cycle day 8. Ideally, you want to have this done between cycle day 6 and 10. Since they are going to be inserting contrast dye into your uterus, you want to be done menstruating. You don't want to be bleeding and have contrast dye. That'd just be ridiculous. And you want to do it before ovulation because you don't want to do that while you're pregnant. You want to put contrast dye in your uterus when you're pregnant. It's crazy. So you want to schedule it between cycle day 6 and 10. Your doctor might say cycle day 6 and 12. 6 and 10. So an hour before my procedure, I took, I think I took 1,000 milligrams of Tylenol because I only had the 500 milligram rapid release. They said take between 600 and 800. So I took 1,000. Whatever. So make sure you take the painkillers an hour before. Most of the time your clinic will also call in a prescription for an antibiotic. They'll want you to start taking it a couple days before the procedure and a couple days after the procedure. This is just because, they're going to be putting a catheter in, and anytime they're inserting a catheter into your uterus, there's a chance of infection. So it's, purely a precaution. So just kind of be aware of that. There might be an antibiotic that you need to take. So my appointment was at 9:45 in the morning. So obviously, I took the medicine at 8:45, or I took the Tylenol at 8:45. Got in the car, drove there, walked up to the front desk. They already knew who I was and everything. Did a basic check-in. They scanned my insurance cards. Who knows if they'll cover it, but you can also call ahead and talk to your insurance company if you want to, but I just figured it needs to be done, so whatever. I sat down, and literally 5 minutes later, the lovely nurse called me back. She was very friendly. She led me back to a row of, it kind of looked like when you're going into a dressing room at your local clothing store. So I went in there, removed everything from the waist down, so whatever. Everything from the waist down, and I put on this, it's their version of a gown, but it was great. It was like a giant long sweatshirt. It didn't have a slit down the front or back, so that was great. It's actually very, very comfortable. Then I walked into the room, sat on the table, and this is what the room looked like. I sat on the table, and the nurse explained that what was going to happen is I was going to scoot to the very edge of the table, just kind of like when you're doing a transvaginal ultrasound. Kind of, you want your butt right on the edge of the table. She puts in a speculum. She swabbed the cervix with betadine solution, disinfectant. Then she inserted the catheter. I didn't feel that at all. Then she inserted the balloon. She got those all placed, and then what they had me do was use my heels to kind of scoop my butt back towards the middle of the table so I could lay down flat with my head on the pillow. So it's over my abdomen, and then the loveliness happened. The balloon, I guess, was inflated to hold the catheter in place and to make sure that the contrast dye stayed in my uterus and didn't just leak out. That was not really pleasant. Maybe I'm just a big old weenie. I think that throughout this telling of my experience with an HSG, I think I probably had a little bit of a worse experience than most people did. So just kind of take it as like a, hopefully yours is going to be better than this. But the balloon did cramp quite a bit. It was very uncomfortable, and they just said to focus on your breathing and that, you know, this whole thing's going to be over in 5 minutes, so just tough it out. So then they put in the contrast dye, and the way that I can describe it is that I just felt full. Obviously, that kind of goes without saying, but just kind of felt a little bloated up and swollen because all of a sudden they just filled up my uterus and some of my abdominal cavity with all this dye. So it definitely felt kind of stretched and wide. Sorry, there's an air show this weekend and planes keep flying over. Lovely. So they put the contrast dye in, and then once she had injected all the contrast dye, she had me roll up onto one hip so that it could fill that fallopian tube and spill out into the abdominal cavity. And she had me roll back on my back, roll up on the other hip, do the same thing, and then come back in the middle. She took a final picture with the, you know, that showed the dye spilling out the fallopian tubes into the abdominal cavity. So that shows that there wasn't any blockages. And then they were done. They deflated the balloon, pulled out the balloon and the catheter, and then they warned me when I set up, it was gonna kind of feel like a gush of menstrual fluid, you know? And that the dye was clear, but it was very sticky, kind of like maple syrup. So they sent me home with some panty liners, and there was a bathroom that I could clean up in, but just so you know. When it was all done, she went over the pictures with me. She showed me that my fallopian tubes were clear. She explained kind of what everything was. And again, if your doctors don't do this, please ask questions, because you have the right to know what's going on, and they will explain kind of what they see. They explain the state of the fallopian tubes, whether or not they're clear, whether or not there's any blockages, if there looks like there's any, you know, endometrial or infection scarring, and then they also discuss the shape of your uterus with you. And this is also a good opportunity to see if you have any issues with the overall structure of your uterus. So then I went home, and everything was fine. And about 2 hours later, I mean, I was sore and kind of tired, but I was fine. About 2 hours later, I just started getting really, really crampy. I was very, very tired all day long. And my uterus was just sore. It was just really, really tender and sore. I mean, I could push down kind of on my really low abdomen, and it just kind of hurt. I thought everything was better. I had the day off, and I kind of would recommend taking the day off. It's a good excuse to have the procedure done earlier in the morning, and just kind of relax the rest of the day, because you don't know how you're going to respond. I don't usually have that bad of menstrual cramps, so maybe, like I said, maybe I'm just a big weenie, but I felt awful. And that night when I was laying in bed, Apollo jumped up with me, and in an attempt to like lay on me and love on me because he knew I wasn't feeling good, he stepped on where my uterus is, and I screamed out in pain. It hurt so bad. So just know that you're probably gonna be a little tender. Sometimes sitting in certain positions kind of zings a little bit, and I think that was just from the balloon kind of dilating my cervix a little bit. But the next day I was totally fine. So alright, so what I would love, and what I think would make this even better, is if you've had an HSG, post a video response and tell us about your experience. And if you have questions about an HSG, post a comment, and those of us that have had an HSG can respond and answer your questions. Because I think this is a really good opportunity for us to kind of combine stories and help the newbies, because you know, you don't know what to expect. This is kind of a weird procedure. I mean, how often do you get contrast dye shoved into your uterus? Hopefully not very often. So I hope that kind of helped alleviate your fears. honestly, the whole procedure only lasted 5 minutes and it really wasn't that bad, and it was a really good excuse to take a day off work and just lay around and watch Father of the Bride Part 2. Alright guys, bye!